I asked my son and daughter-in-law a simple question. When is the wedding I needed to know so I could book flights for my brother? My daughter-in-law did not even look up from her phone. She popped a piece of expensive steak into her mouth and said, "We got married yesterday, Dad. It was just for special people. You would not have fit in." I sat there stunned in the penthouse apartment that I pay for every month. 1 week later, she called me screaming. "The rent is overdue." The landlord sent a notice. "Did you transfer the $6,000 yet?" I gripped the phone, felt a cold smile spread across my face for the first time in days, and whispered, "Didn't I tell you?" But before I tell you how I evicted my own son from his luxury life, please hit that like button to support this channel. Subscribe if you believe respect is a two-way street. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. It makes me happy to know who is listening. Now let's go back to that Sunday dinner where everything changed. My name is Tom Redford. I am 70 years old. I have calluses on my hands that will never go away, souvenirs from 40 years of hauling lumber and pouring concrete in the freezing Chicago winters. I built my life and my fortune one brick at a time. But looking at me, you would just see an old man in a worn-out flannel shirt and comfortable work boots. I never saw the need for designer suits. My son Lucas and his wife Brittany are different. They live for the image. It was a Sunday evening in early May. I was sitting at the dining table of the penthouse apartment on North Lake Shore Drive. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking, looking right out over the dark water of Lake Michigan. It is the kind of view that costs $6,500 a month. I know the price exactly, because every first of the month, the money leaves my account to pay for it. Lucas and Brittany tell their friends they are successful entrepreneurs. Lucas works in marketing, and Brittany is what they call an influencer. But the truth is, their lifestyle is entirely subsidized by my retirement savings. Or at least that is what they think. The dinner was tense. It usually is. The only sound was the scraping of silver knives against fine porcelain plates. Brittany was scrolling through her phone, her face illuminated by the blue light, ignoring the food. Lucas was nervously topping up his wine glass, refusing to meet my eyes. I cleared my throat. I wanted to break the ice. "Lucas, I'm Brittany," I said, keeping my voice cheerful. "June is right around the corner. I need to know the specific date of the wedding ceremony. Your Uncle Mike wants to fly in from Ohio, and ticket prices are going up. I need to book his hotel." I waited for an answer. I expected them to pull out a calendar. I expected excitement. Instead, the silence in the room grew heavy, thick, suffocating. Lucas put his wineglass down. His hand was shaking slightly. He looked at Brittany, silently begging her to speak. Brittany sighed, a long, dramatic sound of annoyance. She finally set her phone down on the table. She looked at me with an expression I can only describe as pity mixed with disdain. "Oh, Tom," she said. "She rarely called me Dad unless she wanted money. You do not need to book anything for Uncle Mike. Tell him to stay in Ohio." I was confused. "Did you change the date? Is it delayed?" "No," she said, picking up her wine glass and inspecting her manicure. "We got married yesterday. Saturday. At the Ritz-Carlton." The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. I blinked, trying to process the words. Yesterday. But I was right here. I was at home 10 minutes away. My phone was on. I was waiting. "Lucas," I said, turning to my son. "You got married yesterday and you didn't call me Lucas." Looked down at his plate, pushing a piece of asparagus around with his fork. "It was a small ceremony, Dad. We wanted to keep it tight." Brittany let out a short, cruel laugh. "It wasn't small, Lucas. Stop lying. It was elegant." She turned to me, her eyes cold and hard. "Look, Tom, we wanted a specific aesthetic, a certain vibe. We invited about 200 people. But it was just for special people. The kind of crowd that appreciates high society. Special people." The words hung in the air like a slap in the face. You know how you are, Tom, she continued, waving a hand at my outfit. You are uncomfortable in those settings. You would have felt out of place. We did it for you, really. We didn't want you standing around in your old suit feeling awkward among the elite. It would have been embarrassing for everyone. I looked at my son, the boy I carried on my shoulders, the boy whose college tuition I paid for by working double shifts, the boy I bought this apartment for so he could feel successful. Lucas, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Is that true? You didn't invite your own father because I would embarrass you. Lucas finally looked up, his face red. It's not like that, Dad. It's just Brittany's parents booked the Ritz. They paid for the deposit. They wanted a certain list of guests. It was complicated. We just thought it would be easier this way. We were going to have a barbecue for you later. You know, something more your speed. Burgers and beer in the backyard. A barbecue, while they drank champagne at the Ritz. That is when I saw it. Brittany raised her left hand to brush a stray hair from her face. On her ring finger sat a diamond, a massive, sparkling rock. It caught the light of the chandelier. I knew that ring. I knew it intimately. 3 months ago, Lucas had come to me begging for help to buy the perfect engagement ring. He said he wanted to show her how much he loved her. I wrote a check for $50,000. I was staring at $50,000 of my hard-earned money on the finger of a woman who just told me I wasn't special enough to see her put it on. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. It wasn't heartbreak. It was something else. It was the death of an illusion. I realized in that moment that I wasn't a father to them. I wasn't a patriarch. I was a wallet. I was a utility. I was the dirty plumbing that kept their water running, necessary but meant to be hidden behind the walls. I looked around the apartment. The Italian leather sofa, the 70-inch television, the abstract art on the walls. I paid for the security deposit. I paid the rent. I paid the utilities. I was financing a stage for them to play rich, and they had just kicked me off the set. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. You're leaving, Lucas asked, sounding relieved. You haven't finished your steak. I'm not hungry, I said. My voice was steady. Surprisingly steady. Brittany rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Tom. It's just a party. We'll send you some photos if the photographer got any good ones. But honestly, you should be thanking us. You hate wearing ties. I looked at her. I looked at the diamond on her finger. I looked at my son, who was already reaching for the wine bottle to refill his glass, desperate to numb his own shame. Congratulations on your wedding, I said. I hope it was worth it. I walked to the door. I didn't slam it. I closed it softly behind me. As I walked down the hallway to the elevator, I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I felt like a businessman who just realized a bad investment needed to be liquidated. I took the elevator down to the lobby. The doorman, a man named Henry, who I had known for years, tipped his hat to me. Good evening, Mr. Redford, Henry said. Leaving early tonight. Yes, Henry, I said. I think I'm done here. I walked out into the cool Chicago night air. I looked up at the penthouse window glowing warm and golden in the dark sky. They were up there probably laughing about how the old man took it so well. Probably relieved that the awkward conversation was over so they could get back to their special people life. They had no idea. They thought they were dealing with Tom, the retired contractor. They thought I was just a lonely old man with a pension. They forgot that before I retired, I didn't just build houses. I owned the company. I owned the land. And most importantly, they forgot who actually signed the lease on that apartment. I took out my phone. I didn't call them. I called my lawyer, Sarah. It was Sunday night, but she answered on the first ring. Tom, is everything okay? Sarah asked. Sarah, I said, staring up at the building. I need you to pull the file on the North Lake Shore property. The one Lucas is in, she asked. Yes, I said. The lease renewal is coming up, isn't it? Next month, she confirmed. Do you want me to renew it automatically like we usually do? Do not renew it. And Sarah, I want you to prepare a notice. What kind of notice, Tom? I took a deep breath of the cold night air. It tasted like freedom. A notice of non-payment, I said. And prepare the eviction protocols. I think it is time my son learned what it actually costs to be special. 3 days had passed since I walked out of that penthouse, and the silence from my son was deafening. I was sitting in my usual booth at Lou's Diner on the south side of the city, a place where the coffee is strong, the eggs are greasy, and the bill never runs over $12. This was my world. The vinyl seats were cracked and taped over with duct tape, and the air smelled of bacon grease and hard work. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, perfume-scented air of the apartment I paid for, but I felt more at home here among the truck drivers and night shift nurses than I ever did sitting on my son's Italian leather sofa. I was just dipping a piece of buttered toast into my yolk when my phone started vibrating against the laminate table. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken years ago, a picture of Brittany smiling at a barbecue before she became too good for backyard parties. I let it ring for a moment, staring at the name. She wasn't calling to apologize. I knew that in my bones. She was calling because it was the 3rd of the month. I slid my thumb across the screen and brought the phone to my ear, staying silent, waiting for her to speak first. Dad, are you there? Brittany's voice pierced my ear, shrill and breathless without a single hello. Or how are you? Look, I know things were weird at dinner the other night and we can talk about that later, but right now we have a situation. The landlord just emailed us a notice. The rent is overdue, Dad. Plus there is a $500 service fee for the amenities this month. It is $7,000 total. You need to transfer it right now because the management company is being incredibly aggressive this time. I took a slow sip of my coffee. The liquid was hot and bitter, grounding me. The audacity was breathtaking. She was talking about the landlord being aggressive as if I wasn't the one who owned the building. She was talking about a management company as if I didn't sign their paychecks. She wanted $7,000 from the man she didn't think was special enough to attend her wedding. I cleared my throat and kept my voice calm, masking the storm brewing inside me. $7,000 is a lot of money, Brittany, I said slowly. I thought maybe after the wedding expense you two might have saved a little to help out. There was a huff of impatience on the other end. Dad, you know our capital is tied up in Lucas's branding startup, she said, using the buzzwords she always used to make unemployment sound like a career. We just need you to handle this month. We are really stressed out. We are trying to start our life together, and this financial pressure is toxic. Just send the money, okay? I leaned back in the booth. I could hear the clatter of plates from the kitchen. I will look into it, I said. But before I go, I wanted to ask you something. I have been thinking about the wedding. Since I wasn't there, I was hoping maybe you could send me a few photos. I just want to see my son in his tuxedo. I want to see you in your dress. The silence on the line was instant and heavy. I could almost hear her brain spinning, calculating the risk. Oh, Dad, she said, her voice dropping to a fake sweet register that made my skin crawl. We actually didn't take any photos. It was a phone-free ceremony. We wanted everyone to really be in the moment, you know. It was just a small, intimate gathering. No photographers, no distractions, just memories. So there is nothing to send. I am sorry. Now about the transfer. Can you do it within the hour? I closed my eyes. The lie was so lazy, so disrespectful. She thought I was a senile old fool who didn't understand how the world worked. I will check my bank account, Brittany, I said. Great, thanks, she said, and the line went dead. No goodbye. No, I love you. Just the click of disconnection. I put the phone down on the table. My hand was shaking not from age, but from a rage so cold it felt like ice in my veins. She lied. I knew she lied. You don't spend $50,000 on a ring and rent the Ritz-Carlton to have a phone-free wedding with no pictures. I signaled to the waitress. Her name was Jenny, a college student who worked double shifts to pay her tuition. She had dark circles under her eyes, but she always had a smile for me. "Refill, Mr. Tom?" she asked, holding the pot. "No, Jenny," I said. "I need a favor. You young people know about the internet, right? You know about that Instagram thing?" Jenny laughed, a genuine tired sound. "Yeah, Mr. Tom. I live on it." "Why you want to make an account?" "No," I said. "I just want to see something. If someone posted pictures but I am not friends with them, can I still see them? Depends," she said, sliding into the booth opposite me. "If their profile is public, anyone can see them. You don't need an account." "Who are you looking for?" I told her Brittany's full name. I spelled it out. Brittany usually branded herself as a public figure, an influencer. She lived for attention. I doubted she would lock her profile. Jenny pulled out her phone, her thumbs flying across the screen. "Okay, here she is," Jenny said, turning the screen toward me. "Is this her?" "Blonde, lots of makeup, looks like she is shouting at a salad." "That is her," I said. Jenny tapped the screen. "Oh, wow. She got married this weekend. These photos are insane." I took the phone from Jenny's hand. I put on my reading glasses. I looked at the screen and my heart shattered all over again. There were hundreds of photos. It wasn't a small ceremony. It was a spectacle. There were drone shots of the venue. There were videos of a 10-tier cake. There were photos of Lucas and Brittany posing in front of a wall of white roses that probably cost more than my first truck. They were laughing, drinking expensive champagne, surrounded by people in tuxedos and designer gowns. I scrolled down. I saw my brother's empty seat in my mind, while I looked at photos of strangers eating lobster tail. And then I saw it. A video posted yesterday. The thumbnail showed Brittany's parents holding microphones on a stage. I pressed play. The tiny speaker on the phone chirped to life. Brittany's father, a man who had never worked a day of hard labor in his life, was raising a glass. To Lucas he bellowed, his face flushed with drink. A true self-made man. He didn't rely on handouts. He didn't come from a legacy. He built his success from the ground up with nothing but his own grit and Brittany's support. "We are so proud to welcome a man of such independent means into the family." The crowd cheered. Lucas stood up and bowed, a smug smile on his face. He soaked up the applause. He accepted the lie. He let them call him self-made while wearing a suit I paid for, living in a house I paid for, eating food I paid for. He erased me. He didn't just exclude me from the party, he excluded me from his history. He was ashamed of the dirty hands that built his clean life. I handed the phone back to Jenny. My chest felt hollow. "Are you okay, Mr. Tom?" Jenny asked gently. "You look pale." "I am fine, Jenny," I said. "I just learned something important today. I paid for my breakfast. I left a $20 tip for a $12 meal because Jenny deserved it more than my son deserved a penthouse." I walked out to my old pickup truck and sat in the driver's seat. I pulled out my own phone. I opened my banking app. I looked at the balance. It was a substantial number, a number accumulated over 40 years of sweat and smart investments. I went to the transfer tab. I saw the saved payee, Lucas Redford. I saw the usual amount, $7,000. My thumb hovered over the confirm button. It would be so easy. It was a habit. I had done it every month for 3 years. It was just money. If I paid it, they would leave me alone for another month. But then I saw the image of Lucas bowing to that crowd. I heard the words "self-made man" echoing in the cab of my truck. If he is self-made, I whispered to the empty air, then he can pay his own rent. I canceled the transfer. I closed the app. In thoughts, I put the phone in my pocket. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to be the safety net. I was going to be the gravity. I started the engine, and as I pulled away from the curb, I didn't feel guilty. I felt like a contractor who finally decided to demolish a building that was too rotten to save. 2 days after I refused to transfer the rent money, I found myself standing in the elevator of the building on North Lake Shore Drive. I told myself I was just going to check on the property. I told myself I needed to inspect the plumbing or check the seals on the windows. But deep down, I knew I was looking for an excuse. I was looking for a reason to forgive them. A father's heart is a stubborn thing. It keeps beating for his children even when they have stabbed it repeatedly. I thought maybe if I saw them, if I looked them in the eye, without the pressure of a phone call, we could fix this. Maybe Lucas would hug me. Maybe Brittany would offer me a cup of coffee and explain that it was all just stress. I was a fool. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime on the penthouse floor. The hallway was quiet, lined with plush carpet that muffled my heavy work boots. I walked toward the double mahogany doors of Unit 41. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my key ring. I had a copy of every key for every property I owned. It was my right. It was my insurance. I slid the brass key toward the lock, but metal hit plastic. I stopped. I leaned in closer, squinting in the hallway light. The brass lock cylinder was gone. In its place was a sleek black glass panel with a blue glowing ring in the center. A biometric scanner. A smart lock. They had changed the locks. They had spent hundreds of dollars to install a high-tech security system to keep out the very man who paid for the walls that system was attached to. I stood there holding my useless brass key, feeling a flush of humiliation rise up my neck. I was the landlord. I was the financier, and I was locked out like a stranger. I raised my hand to pound on the door. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand entry. My fist was inches from the wood when I heard a sound that froze me in place. Laughter. Loud, raucous laughter coming from inside. The hallway was quiet, but they must have had the balcony doors open to let in the lake breeze, creating a draft that carried their voices right through the gaps in the doorframe. I could hear them as clearly as if I were standing in the living room. "Oh my God!" Brittany's voice rang out sharp and mocking. You should have seen his face when I told him the wedding was yesterday. He looked like a lost puppy. It was pathetic. I lowered my hand. I stepped closer to the door, holding my breath. Another voice joined in. A woman I didn't recognize. Probably one of her influencer friends. "But aren't you worried he will cut you off?" the friend asked. "I mean, he pays for this place, doesn't he?" I waited for Lucas to defend me. I waited for my son to say something about respect or family, or even just basic decency. Brittany laughed again, the sound of ice clinking in a glass accompanying her words. "Please," she scoffed. "That old man, he is just a mobile wallet. That is all he is. He has no life. He has no friends. His entire existence revolves around trying to buy our affection. He is terrified we will leave him alone, so he pays whatever we ask." I felt a physical pain in my chest, a tightening that made it hard to breathe. Mobile wallet. And honestly, she continued, her voice dripping with disgust. "Look at him. He walks around in those dirty flannel shirts and those disgusting boots. He looks like a janitor. Can you imagine him at the Ritz? In the middle of my reception, he would have ruined the aesthetic. People would have thought we were a charity case. It was best to hide him away. Keep him in the shadows where he belongs." I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. I closed my eyes. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run away and never hear another word. But then I heard my son. Lucas chuckled, a low, weak sound that I used to think was gentle, but now I recognized as cowardly. "Do not worry about the money, babe," Lucas said. "My dad is easy to fool. He is soft. All I have to do is call him in a few days, maybe cry a little talk about how hard the startup world is and how much pressure I am under. I will just play the poor, struggling son. He eats that up. He loves to feel like the savior. He will open his checkbook before I even finish the sentence." The group laughed together, a chorus of entitlement. They were drinking my champagne, sitting on my furniture, living in my building, and laughing about how easy it was to manipulate the stupid old man. Something inside me shifted then. It wasn't a snap. It wasn't an explosion. It was a solidification. The last remaining pieces of the father who wanted to be loved turned into stone. The grief evaporated. The hurt vanished. What was left in its place was cold, hard calculation. I was no longer Thomas Redford, the doting father. I was Thomas Redford, the man who crushed his competitors in the construction business for 30 years. I was the man who negotiated multi-million-dollar contracts without blinking. I was the man who knew how to spot a structural failure and condemn a building before it collapsed. And I was looking at a structural failure right now. I did not knock. I did not ring the bell. I did not scream. I carefully put my useless brass key back into my pocket. I smoothed down the front of my flannel shirt. I looked at the black smart lock one last time. They thought technology could keep me out. They thought they held the power because they controlled the door. They forgot who owned the building. I turned around and walked back to the elevator. My steps were steady. My head was high. I pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, shutting out the sound of their laughter, I checked the time on my watch. It was 2 p.m. My lawyer Sarah would still be in her office. I didn't have a son anymore. I had a delinquent tenant. And I knew exactly how to deal with bad tenants. The ride down to the lobby felt different than the ride up. On the way up, I was a worried parent. On the way down, I was a businessman preparing for a liquidation. I walked past the doorman Henry without stopping to chat this time. "Have a good day," Mr. Redford, Henry called out. I stopped at the glass doors and looked back at him. "Henry," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. "If anyone from Unit 41 asks for me or tries to leave a package for me or mentions my name, you tell them nothing. As far as you are concerned, I was never here." Henry looked confused, but he nodded. "Understood, sir." I walked out to my truck. The city noise washed over me. Sirens, horns, the rumble of the train. It was the sound of Chicago. It was the sound of reality. My son wanted to play the poor, struggling entrepreneur fine. I would give him the opportunity to play the role for real. I sat in the cab of my truck and looked up at the penthouse balcony one last time. I could see the faint movement of figures up there, silhouettes against the sky. They were celebrating their victory. They were celebrating their cleverness. "Enjoy the view, Lucas," I whispered, "because it is the last time you will see it from that angle." I put the truck in gear and pulled into traffic. I wasn't going home to cry. I was going to my lawyer's office to draft the paperwork that would pull the rug out from under their entire world. The time for mercy was over. The time for business had begun. I drove straight to the Loop, the heart of Chicago's business district, and parked my truck in a spot reserved for maintenance vehicles, because that is how I prefer to move through the world, unseen and unnoticed. I walked into the lobby of the Jenkins and Associates building, where the marble floors echoed under my boots, and a young man in a tailored suit looked at me with disdain as we waited for the elevator, probably wondering why the janitor was using the main lift. He did not know that I owned the building we were standing in. I didn't own it as Tom, the contractor. I owned it as Redford Holdings. When I reached the top floor, the receptionist, a sharp woman named Elena, who had been with the firm for 20 years, stood up immediately. "Mr. Redford," she said, her voice full of respect. "Sarah is expecting you. Go right in." I walked past the glass walls of the conference rooms, past the associates billing $500 an hour, and into the corner office where Sarah Jenkins was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. She turned when I entered, and she didn't look at my boots or my flannel shirt. She looked at my face. "You look like you are ready for a war, Tom," she said. I sat down in the leather chair opposite her desk, which creaked under my weight. "I am not ready for a war, Sarah," I said. "I am ready for a correction." Sarah sat down and opened a thick file folder on her desk labeled Redford Holdings Asset Management. She knew the truth. She was the only one who really knew. Everyone else, including my own son, thought I was a retired general contractor who had saved a few pennies and had a decent pension. They thought I spent my days fixing porches and fishing. They didn't know that for 40 years, every dollar I made went into land. They didn't know that when the market crashed, I bought. They didn't know that I didn't just build the skyscrapers they admired, I kept them. I owned 5 residential towers in Chicago, including the one at 400 North Lake Shore Drive. I owned strip malls in the suburbs. I owned the land under the very diner where I ate breakfast every morning. I was worth north of $80 million, and my son treated me like a beggar. I want to talk about Unit 41 at the Lakeshore property, I said. Sarah nodded. The penthouse. The lease is up for renewal on the 1st of next month. Current tenants are Lucas Redford and Brittany Redford. The rent is $6,500 a month, plus a $500 amenity fee. You have been covering the payments via a direct transfer from your personal account to the holding company account for 3 years. I leaned forward, my hands calloused and rough against the smooth mahogany of her desk. Stop the transfers, I said immediately. Sarah typed something into her computer. Done. The automatic payment is canceled. That means the rent for this month is now officially overdue. Good, I said. Now I want you to initiate the standard collection protocol. Sarah stopped typing and looked at me over the rim of her glasses. Standard protocol, Tom. That is your son. Standard protocol means a 3-day notice to pay or quit. It means late fees. It means a formal eviction filing if they don't pay. It means the sheriff comes to put their furniture on the curb. I know what it means, I said. I wrote the protocol. But Tom, Sarah said, her voice softening. If you do this, they will know. They will see the name Redford Holdings on the eviction notice. They might figure it out. No, I said. They won't. Lucas has never looked at a contract in his life. He thinks Redford Holdings is just some faceless corporation. He thinks it is a coincidence that the name is the same. He thinks Redford is a common name. He has never asked me about my business. He has never asked me about my assets. He just asks for the check. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city I helped build. I saw the steel and the glass and the concrete. It was strong because it had a foundation. My son had no foundation. I had built him a castle on a cloud, and now I had to let it rain. I want you to treat them exactly like you would treat a stranger who stopped paying, I said, watching the traffic below. Do not use my name. Do not contact them as my lawyer. Contact them as the legal representative of the property management firm. Be cold. Be professional. Be ruthless. Sarah hesitated, tapping her pen against the desk. Tom, are you doing this to punish them, or are you doing this to teach them? I turned back to her. I am doing this to find out who they are, I said. I want to see what happens when the safety net is gone. I want to see if my son is the self-made man he claims to be, or if he is just a child playing dress-up. If he is a man, he will figure it out. He will get a job. He will move to a cheaper place. He will apologize. And if he isn't, Sarah asked, then he will lose everything, I said, and he will have to rebuild from the rubble just like I did. Sarah sighed and closed the folder. She looked sad. She had known Lucas since he was a boy. She had been at his graduation. She had probably sent a gift to the wedding I wasn't invited to. This is going to get ugly, Tom, she warned. When people like Brittany and Lucas get squeezed, they don't get humble, they get angry. They get desperate. They might say things to you about you that you can't unhear. I have already heard enough, I said. I heard them laughing at me. I heard them call me a mobile wallet. I heard them say, I belong in the shadows. I am done being in the shadows, Sarah. I am the landlord. And rent is due. Sarah nodded slowly and picked up her phone. I will call the property manager, she said. We will post the notice on their door tomorrow morning. 5 days to pay the full balance plus late fees, or we file for eviction. Thank you, Sarah. I said. She paused, her finger hovering over the dial button. Tom, she asked quietly, are you sure? Once we start this legal machine, it is hard to stop. It will be on his credit record. It will humiliate him. It is tarnish on the name. This is cruel, Tom. I picked up my old baseball cap from the chair and put it on, adjusting the brim to shadow my eyes. I thought about the wedding photos. I thought about the empty seat where I should have been. I thought about the lies. Cruel, I asked, my voice devoid of warmth. Evicting a tenant who doesn't pay is business, Sarah. It is logic. Do you know what is actually cruel? Sarah waited. Cruel is a son looking his father in the eye and telling him he isn't good enough to be seen with. Cruel is disowning the man who gave you the life you are living. That is cruel. This is just consequences. I walked toward the door. Send the notice, Sarah, I said without looking back. And make sure the font is large enough for them to read. I wouldn't want them to miss the details. It was the 10th of May, and the morning sun was hitting the pavement outside the diner, but I was not thinking about the weather. I was thinking about the calendar. In the world of property management, the 10th is a significant date. The 1st is when rent is due. The 5th is when the grace period ends. The 10th is when the patience runs out. I sat in my truck, parked 2 blocks away from the North Lake Shore Tower, watching the building like a general surveying a battlefield. I knew exactly what was happening inside the penthouse because I had engineered it. I could imagine the scene perfectly. Lucas would be sitting at that glass dining table, staring at his laptop screen, his face pale. He would be trying to pay the American Express bill, the one that held the charges for the champagne, the flowers, and the deposits for the Ritz-Carlton. He would be clicking the submit payment button, expecting the usual flow of funds from my account to cover his excesses. But today, the screen would be flashing a red error message. Insufficient funds. Transaction declined. I checked my watch. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. Brittany would be waking up about now, expecting her latte and her easy life to continue. She would likely try to order breakfast from one of those delivery apps she used 3 times a day. She would tap her phone expecting the order to go through, but she would get the same message Lucas got. Card declined. Please update payment method. The panic would start as a slow trickle, a confused conversation, a check of the bank balances, and then the realization would hit them like a freight train. The account was empty. The $7,000 for the rent had not arrived. The $500 for the amenities had not arrived. The supplemental transfer I usually sent for groceries had not arrived. They were sitting in a $4 million apartment with $0 in the bank. My phone began to ring. The screen lit up with Lucas's name. I let it ring. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. I wanted them to sweat. I wanted them to feel the silence. I picked up on the 4th ring, keeping my voice groggy, like an old man who had just woken up from a nap. Hello? I said, my voice slow and confused. Dad, Lucas shouted, his voice cracking with panic. Dad. Where have you been? We have been calling you for an hour. Is everything okay? Are you in the hospital? I took a sip of my coffee from the thermos on the dashboard. I am fine, Lucas, I said calmly. Just a bit of arthritis in the knees today. Moving slow. Why are you shouting? It is the 10th, Dad, Lucas said, trying to lower his voice but failing. The money, the transfer, it hasn't shown up. The landlord's portal is showing a delinquency notice. We can't pay the credit cards. We are locked out of our accounts. Did you forget to press the button? I paused. I let the silence stretch over the line, heavy and uncomfortable. Oh, that, I said. Well, son, I have some bad news. Things are a little tight this month. You know how the economy is. My pension check was delayed. There was a mix-up with the paperwork at the Social Security office. It is a real headache. There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. What do you mean, tight? Lucas asked, his voice trembling. Dad, the rent is $7,000. We don't have $7,000. We spent everything on the wedding. You know that. I looked out the window at the busy street. People were rushing to work. People who paid their own bills. People who didn't call their fathers to demand handouts. I know, son, I said. But I am afraid I can't help you this time. I am a little short myself. I have to buy medicine. I have to fix the truck. You guys are successful entrepreneurs, right? You are the self-made man everyone toasted to at the wedding. I am sure you can figure it out. You just need to budget better. Maybe sell some of those wedding gifts. I heard a rustling sound on the other end, a scuffle, and then Brittany's voice pierced my eardrum, shrill and hysterical. Are you joking, Tom? She screamed. This isn't funny. $7,000. Do you have any idea what happens if we don't pay? They will put a mark on our credit. They will charge late fees. We have a reputation in this building. We cannot be the people who don't pay rent. You want us out on the street? Is that what you want? You are doing this on purpose because you are bitter about the wedding, aren't you? Her voice was ugly. It was the voice of a spoiled child who had never been told no. It was the voice of someone who believed the world owed her a living simply because she existed. Brittany. I said, my voice dropping, the act becoming cold and hard. I am not bitter, I am just broke. Or at least that is what you should assume. You wanted me to disappear, remember? You wanted me out of the picture. Well, my wallet has disappeared along with me. But we have a lease, she shrieked. You can't just stop paying. Actually, I said, I think you will find that the lease is in your names. You signed it. You live there. It is your responsibility. Dad, please. Lucas broke in, sounding like he was about to cry. We don't have it. We literally don't have it. What are we supposed to do? I gripped the steering wheel of my truck. I remembered the days I ate canned beans so he could have new sneakers. I remembered the double shifts. I remembered the sacrifices. And I remembered him laughing at me 2 days ago. You are supposed to do what every other adult in this country does, Lucas, I said. You get a job. You sell things you don't need. You struggle. But Dad, he started. Welcome to the real world, son, I said. I hung up the phone. I turned it off and tossed it onto the passenger seat. I sat there for a moment, breathing in the silence. It didn't feel good. It felt heavy. But it felt necessary. I looked up at the tower. I saw the lights of the penthouse flickering. They were probably pacing back and forth, screaming at each other, looking for someone to blame. They would be blaming me. They would be calling me names. But they wouldn't be looking for a job. Not yet. I picked up my other phone, the one I used for business. I dialed the number for the building manager, a man named Frank, who reported directly to Sarah Jenkins. Frank, I said. It is Mr. Redford. Yes, sir, Frank answered immediately. Has the mail been delivered to Unit 41 yet? I asked. I am walking up there right now, Sir Frank said. I have the envelope in my hand. Red urgent stamp. Official notice of non-payment and intent to evict. Good, I said. Slide it under the door. Make sure it is visible. I will take care of it, sir. I hung up and started the truck. I imagined the scene that was about to happen upstairs. The sound of footsteps in the hallway. The pause. The soft sound of paper sliding across the floorboards. The red logo of the management company staring up at them like a bloodstain on their pristine floor. Notice of delinquency. It was the first crack in their glass castle, and I was the one holding the hammer. I put the truck in drive and headed toward the job site. I had work to do, and for the first time in their lives, so did they. I knew exactly what desperation looked like because I had seen it in the mirror 40 years ago when I was starting out. But for my son and his wife, desperation looked like a walk of shame into a high-end consignment store on Michigan Avenue. I wasn't there physically, but I didn't need to be. I knew their inventory. I knew their habits. And later, when my private investigator sent me the photos, it confirmed every pathetic detail I had imagined. Brittany walked into a place called the Velvet Vault, a shop that smelled of desperate socialites and old money hitting hard times. She was wearing huge sunglasses trying to hide her face, but there was no hiding the classic flap Chanel bag she was clutching. I had bought that bag for her birthday last year. It cost $6,000. She slammed it onto the glass counter, her manicured nails clicking nervously against the surface. "I need cash," she told the clerk, her voice tight. "Direct wire transfer, today." The clerk, a woman who had seen 1,000 Britneys before, put on white gloves and inspected the leather with clinical detachment. She pointed out a tiny scratch on the hardware. She mentioned the market was flooded. She offered $2,500. Brittany gasped. "That is robbery," she hissed. "That bag is an investment. It is vintage lambskin. My father-in-law paid double that." The clerk just shrugged. "Take it or leave it, honey. Rent is due all over town today." Brittany took it. She signed the papers with a shaking hand, muttering curses under her breath. She wasn't cursing the economy. She wasn't cursing her own spending habits. She was cursing me. I could almost hear the venom. That cheap old man. That selfish dinosaur. How dare he make me sell my things? She walked out of that store $2,000 richer, but stripped of her dignity, clutching the receipt like a lifeline. While she was liquidating her closet, Lucas was trying to liquidate his social capital. He sat in his parked car, scrolling through his contacts, looking for a lifeline among the people who had cheered for him at the Ritz-Carlton. He called Chad his best man, a guy who drove a leased Porsche and talked loud about crypto. "Hey man," Lucas said, trying to sound casual, trying to keep the panic out of his voice. "Listen, we have a little cash flow issue with the startup. Just a hiccup with the investors. I was wondering if you could float me $5,000 for a couple of weeks. Just until the wire clears." I imagine the silence on the other end was heavy. Then came the excuses. The liquidity problems. The bad market. The sudden tunnel where the signal was breaking up. Chad hung up, then Lucas called Mike. Then he called Sarah from the club. One by one, the special people turned their backs. They were happy to drink his champagne when it was free, but the moment the tab came due, they vanished like smoke in a strong wind. Lucas learned a hard lesson that afternoon. He didn't have friends. He had an audience. And the show had just been canceled. They met back at the apartment that evening. The tension in the air was flammable. Brittany threw her empty purse onto the sofa and glared at Lucas. He was sitting at the kitchen island, his head in his hands, defeated. "Did you get the money?" she demanded. Lucas shook his head. "No one can help. Everyone is tied up." Brittany screamed. It was a raw, ugly sound of frustration. She grabbed a vase from the table, a heavy crystal thing I had probably paid for, and hurled it across the room. It shattered against the wall, sending shards of glass raining down onto the hardwood floor. "This is your father's fault," she yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Lucas. "Why is he doing this? Why does he hate us?" "He has the money, Lucas. He is sitting on a pile of cash, and he is letting us drown. It is sick. It is abusive." Lucas looked up, his eyes red. "He said he was broke, Brittany. Maybe he really is." "He is not broke," she shrieked. "He is stingy. He is punishing us because we didn't invite him to the party. He is a petty, vindictive old man. You need to call him again. You need to fix this." "I already called," Lucas said weakly. "He won't budge." "Then threaten him," Brittany spat, her face twisted with malice. "You play hardball. You call him right now, and you tell him that if he doesn't transfer that rent money by tomorrow morning, he is cut off. Tell him he will never see us again. Tell him that when we have children, he will never hold them. Tell him he will die alone without ever meeting his grandchildren. That will scare him. That is the only thing old people care about, legacy." Lucas hesitated. Even he, in his weakness, knew that was a line you couldn't uncross. That is extreme, Britt, he mumbled. Extreme is being evicted, she shouted. Do it. They scraped together the money. Between the pawnshop cash and maxing out the last remaining limit on 3 different credit cards, they managed to come up with the $7,000. They paid the management company at 11:59 p.m., just 1 minute before the eviction filing would have become automatic. They bought themselves 30 days of shelter. But as I sat in my home looking at the report from the building manager confirming the payment, I didn't feel relief for them. I felt a profound disappointment. They didn't get jobs. They didn't cut expenses. They didn't apologize. They just sold a piece of their vanity and leveraged their future debt to maintain an illusion for 1 more month. They had survived the battle, but they had no idea the war was just beginning. Next month was coming, and I had no intention of buying any more purses for them to sell. It was 2 weeks into June, and the silence from my son had stretched thin like a rubber band ready to snap. I was sitting in the corner booth of a quiet coffee shop in the Loop with Sarah Jenkins. We were reviewing the quarterly reports for my commercial properties, but my mind was elsewhere. It is a strange thing to be a father who is estranged from his child. You go through the motions of your day signing papers and drinking coffee, but there is a phantom limb sensation where your family used to be. Every time my phone vibrated, my heart would jump, hoping for an apology, hoping for a sign of maturity. When the phone finally did ring, it wasn't a vibration. It was the shrill, demanding tone I had assigned to Lucas years ago. I looked at the screen. Sarah stopped speaking mid-sentence. She saw the name. She saw the look on my face. She closed her folder and leaned back, watching me. I picked up the phone expecting anger. I expected screaming about the rent or the lack of allowance. I braced myself for entitlement. But when I answered, I heard only heavy, ragged breathing, Dad, Lucas whispered. His voice sounded weak, trembling like a man using his last reserve of oxygen. Dad. Are you there, Lucas? I said, sitting up straighter. What is wrong? Where are you? I am at the hospital, Dad, he wheezed. I am at Northwestern. It happened so fast. I was just walking down the street and my chest, it felt like an elephant was sitting on it. I collapsed. My blood ran cold. The anger I had been nursing for weeks evaporated in a single second. This was my boy. This was the child I had nursed through fevers and broken bones. All the business logic, all the tough love, it all threatened to crumble under the weight of parental instinct. Are you okay? I asked, my voice rising. Did you have a heart attack? Is Brittany with you? She is in the waiting room, Lucas said, his voice hitching with a sob. They won't let her back here yet. The doctors, they say it is a congenital defect, a valve issue. They need to operate immediately, Dad. It is critical. I was already reaching for my wallet. I was already calculating how fast I could drive to the hospital. Okay, son, I said. I am coming. I will be there in 20 minutes. Just hold on. No, wait. Lucas interrupted, a sudden urgency cutting through his weakness. Do not come yet. They are prepping me for surgery. You won't be able to see me. But Dad, there is a problem. A big problem. What problem? I asked. The insurance, he cried. We let the policy lapse last month because money was so tight. They won't operate without a deposit. It is a specialist procedure. They need $50,000 up front, Dad. Or they can't do it. They said I might not make it through the night without it. Please, Dad. I don't want to die. $50,000. The number hung in the air. It was a specific number. It was a large number. But it was the price of my son's life. I looked at Sarah. I covered the mouthpiece of the phone. He is in the hospital. I told her, panic rising in my throat. Heart failure. He needs $50,000 for surgery right now. I have to transfer it. I have to go. I started to stand up. I was ready to run. I was ready to liquidate whatever asset necessary. I was ready to be the mobile wallet again, because what good is a lesson if your son is dead? But Sarah didn't move. She didn't look panicked. She looked suspicious. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out her tablet. Her fingers flew across the screen. "Wait, Tom," she mouthed. "I can't wait, Sarah," I whispered frantically. "He is dying." "Lucas," I said into the phone, "I am going to the bank right now. I will handle it. Just stay calm." "Thank you, Dad." Lucas wept. "You are saving my life. Please hurry. Just wire it to my personal account. It is faster that way. I can pay the hospital directly. Wire it to his personal account." That struck a strange chord. Hospitals usually take payment directly. They have billing departments. They don't ask patients on gurneys to Venmo 50 grand. I hesitated. Just for a second. Sarah spun her tablet around on the table and slid it toward me. "Look," she commanded. I looked down. It wasn't a medical chart. It wasn't a hospital record. It was a photograph. A high-resolution photograph taken from a distance but clear as day. It showed a man standing at a reception desk. He was wearing a fluffy white robe. He was holding a glass of cucumber water. He was laughing, looking healthy and vibrant. It was Lucas. I looked at the timestamp in the corner of the photo. 10:14 a.m. Today. 10 minutes ago. I looked at the location tag Sarah had pulled up. It wasn't Northwestern Memorial Hospital. It was the Azure Sanctuary, a luxury wellness spa and resort just outside the city limits, a place where a weekend package cost $2,000. My hand froze on the phone. The sounds of Lucas's ragged breathing continued in my ear, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Dad," Lucas wheezed. "Are you still there? The pain. It is getting worse." I looked at the photo of my son in his robe sipping spa water, probably preparing for a massage while he told me he was dying to scam me out of $50,000. The fear in my chest vanished. It was replaced by a hollow, echoing void. This wasn't just greed. This wasn't just entitlement. This was evil, to play on a father's worst nightmare, to leverage the fear of death, just to fund a lifestyle he refused to work for. It was a violation of the most sacred bond between us. He wasn't just a bad son, he was a con artist, and I was the mark. I sat back down slowly. I took a sip of my coffee. I let the silence stretch. "I am here, son," I said. My voice was calm, dangerously calm, but Lucas didn't notice. He was too busy acting. "I am at the bank," I lied. "But there is an issue." "What issue?" Lucas asked, his voice sharpening instantly, losing a bit of the tremolo. "Since I am retired," I said, "most of my money is tied up in fixed assets. I don't have $50,000 in liquid cash sitting in my checking account." Lucas made a noise of frustration. "But you have savings. You have the house. Can't you take a loan?" "It is life or death, Dad." I looked at Sarah. She was watching me with a mixture of sadness and steel. She knew what I had to do. "I can't get a loan that fast," I said. "But listen, Lucas. I have the old pickup truck, the vintage Ford. I have a buyer lined up who has been pestering me for years. He offered me $45,000 for it last month." "The truck?" Lucas asked. "But you love that truck." "I love you more," I said. The words tasted like ash in my mouth, because they were true, and he was using that truth to destroy me. "I will call him right now. He can bring cash. But it will take time to get the title transferred and get the money." "How much time?" Lucas demanded. "Maybe 2 weeks," I said. "Can you ask the doctors to stabilize you? Can they put you on a payment plan for a few days?" There was a pause. I could hear him thinking. I could hear him calculating. 2 weeks. That would push them right up to the edge of the next rent cycle. But $50,000 was a lot of money. It was enough to pay the back rent the next few months and still have plenty left over for champagne and spa days. "I think," I think I can convince them, Lucas said, his voice suddenly sounding much stronger. If they know the money is coming. If I show them proof that you are selling the truck. Yes. 2 weeks. I can hold on for 2 weeks. But you have to promise Dad. You have to promise me you will send every cent. I promise, I said. I will send you exactly what you deserve. Thank you, Dad, he said. I have to go now. The nurse is coming. He hung up. I stared at the black screen of my phone. I felt sick, physically ill. He is at a spa, I whispered to Sarah. He is at a spa getting a facial while he tells me his heart is failing. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was firm. He showed you who he is, Tom, she said softly. Now you have to believe him. I nodded. I believed him. I finally believed him. Meanwhile, 20 miles away at the Azure Sanctuary, the scene was very different. Lucas tossed his phone onto the plush chaise lounge and let out a whoop of victory. He wasn't in a hospital gown. He was in a 400 thread count robe. Brittany was sitting next to him getting a pedicure. Did he buy it? Brittany asked, blowing on her wet nails. Hook, line, and sinker, Lucas grinned, picking up his cucumber water. He is selling his precious old truck. 50 grand, baby. It is coming in 2 weeks. Brittany shrieked with delight. 50,000. That covers everything. We can pay off the credit cards. We can pay the rent for the next 6 months. We can book that trip to Cabo. Lucas leaned back, closing his eyes, a look of utter self-satisfaction on his face. I told you, he said. The old man is soft. You just have to know which buttons to push. He thinks he is saving my life. He feels like a hero. Everyone wins. Brittany pulled a credit card out of her purse. It was a new one, a high-interest card they had opened just that morning online, approved instantly with a predatory limit. Well, if the money is guaranteed, she said, her eyes gleaming with greed, then we don't have to worry about the budget today, do we? We can celebrate. Lucas looked at the card. He looked at the spa menu. He thought about the $50,000 that was definitely, absolutely coming his way because his father never broke a promise. Put it on the card, Lucas said. Let's get the couple's massage. And order a bottle of Dom. We deserve it. It has been a stressful month. They high-fived. They laughed. They swiped the card, digging themselves deeper into a hole they thought I was going to fill. They spent money they didn't have, celebrating a victory that was actually a trap. I sat in the coffee shop, looking at the photo of my son in his robe one last time before deleting it. I wasn't selling my truck. I wasn't transferring a dime. I was giving them 2 weeks of rope, and they had just decided to use it to hang themselves. I looked at Sarah. Prepare the next phase, I said. In 2 weeks they are going to be waiting for a check. I want them to get something else instead. Sarah nodded. The eviction notice, no, I said. The eviction is already in motion. In 2 weeks I want to finalize the sale of the building. I want to liquidate the asset. If they want to live in a penthouse, they can deal with the new owners. And I have a feeling the new owners won't be as patient as I was. I finished my coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. I had work to do. My son was busy spending his inheritance. I was busy making sure there wouldn't be one left to spend. 2 weeks had evaporated like water on hot pavement, and the promised $50,000 had not materialized. It was the 1st of July, a date that loomed over the occupants of Penthouse 41 like a guillotine blade. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. But there was no joy in the light. The apartment smelled of stale champagne and anxiety. Lucas sat on the edge of the Italian leather sofa, his phone clutched in his hand like a talisman. He had refreshed his banking app 100 times in the last hour. Every time the result was the same. The balance remained stubbornly, terrifyingly low. The pending transfer from his father, the proceeds from the sale of the vintage truck, was nowhere to be found. Where is it? Lucas muttered, his voice tight with a panic that was starting to curdle into nausea. He said 2 weeks. He promised. Brittany was pacing the length of the living room, her heels clicking sharp staccato rhythms on the hardwood. She was wearing a silk robe she had bought on credit during their spa celebration, but her face was drawn and pale without her usual makeup. "Maybe the bank held it," she said, chewing on her thumbnail. "You know how they are with large transfers. Maybe it is flagged for review." "Call him again." "I called him 10 times, Lucas snapped, throwing the phone onto the cushion. "It goes straight to voicemail. He said he was going fishing with Uncle Mike. He said he might be out of range." "Fishing." Brittany spat the word like a curse. "He is fishing while our lives are hanging by a thread. How selfish can one old man be?" Just then, a heavy thud echoed from the front hallway. It wasn't a knock. It was the sound of something substantial being slid under the door. Lucas and Brittany froze. They looked at each other, eyes wide with a shared primal fear. In the silence of the high-rise, the sound of paper sliding across the floor was deafening. Lucas stood up slowly, his legs feeling like lead. He walked to the hallway. Lying on the marble entryway was a thick, cream-colored envelope. It wasn't the usual white billing envelope. This one looked official, heavy, legal. He picked it up. His hands were shaking so badly he almost dropped it. The return address was Sarah Jenkins and Associates, legal counsel for Redford Holdings Property Management. "Open it," Brittany commanded from the doorway, her voice trembling. Lucas tore the seal. He pulled out the document. At the top, in bold red letters that seemed to burn into his retinas, were the words, "Notice of termination of tenancy and demand for possession." He read the first paragraph, his breath hitching in his throat. "Please take notice that your tenancy of the premises known as Unit 41 is hereby terminated effective immediately due to material breach of lease, specifically non-payment of rent late fees and service charges totaling $14,500. You are hereby required to vacate and surrender possession of said premises within 3 days of receipt of this notice. Failure to comply will result in immediate legal action for forcible entry and detainer." 3 days. Lucas whispered, the paper rattling in his grip. "They are kicking us out. We have 3 days." Brittany snatched the paper from his hand. She scanned it, her eyes darting back and forth. "This cannot be legal," she shrieked. 3 days. That is impossible. You have to give 30 days. You have to give warnings." "We got warnings," Lucas said, sinking to the floor, his back against the wall. "We got the emails. We got the texts. We ignored them because we thought the money was coming. We thought Dad was sending the check. He lied." Brittany hissed, crumbling the eviction notice in her fist. "That old snake lied to us. He didn't sell the truck. Or maybe he did and he kept the money. He set us up, Lucas. He wanted us to feel safe so he could pull the rug out." Lucas put his head in his hands. "We are finished, Britt. We have no money. We have maxed out the new cards on the spa trip and the dinners. We can't even afford a moving truck, let alone a deposit on a new place. We are going to be homeless." Brittany looked down at her husband, not with sympathy, but with a cold, calculating fury. She looked around the penthouse. She looked at the view of the lake, the high ceilings, the crystal chandelier. This was her stage. This was her identity. Being Mrs. Lucas Redford of Lakeshore Drive was the only thing she had. Without this apartment, she was just another girl from the suburbs with a mountain of debt. "No," she said firmly. "We are not finished." Lucas looked up, tears streaming down his face. "Did you hear me? We have 3 days." Brittany walked to the window and looked out at the city. Her mind was racing, spinning, clutching at straws. She was a survivor. She was a manipulator. And she wasn't going to let a piece of paper defeat her. "We still have the apartment for 3 days, right?" she asked, turning back to him. "Technically," Lucas said, "until the sheriff comes. 3 days is a lifetime in our world." "Lucas," she said, a dangerous glint entering her eyes, "listen to me. Why did we need your father's money to pay the rent? To fund the startup? To keep the image alive?" "Yeah, and we failed," Lucas said. "No," Brittany corrected him. We relied on the wrong investor. We relied on a bitter old man. But we have access to others, better ones, wealthier ones. What are you talking about? I am talking about a pivot, she said, her voice gaining strength. We have this penthouse for 3 more days. It is a $4 million asset. It screams success. It screams stability. If we leave now, we leave as failures. But if we use this place one last time, use it for what a party, she said. A housewarming party. But not just a party. A launch event. An exclusive investment opportunity. Lucas stared at her. Are you insane? We are being evicted. Nobody knows that but us and the management, she said quickly. To the world, we are the golden couple. We invite everyone. Chad, Mike, the investors from the club, the people my parents know. We pitch them your branding company. We tell them we are opening a seed round. We ask for 100,000 in capital. We tell them it is an exclusive buy-in. But I don't have a company, Lucas stammered. I just have a website and some business cards. They don't know that, Brittany snapped. You sell the dream, Lucas. You sell the lifestyle. Look at this place. People believe what they see. If we throw the most lavish, exclusive party this city has seen since our wedding, they will believe we are successful. They will write checks. We can raise enough to pay the back rent, pay the legal fees to stop the eviction, and have enough left over to actually start the business. It is a Hail Mary, Lucas. But it is the only play we have left. Lucas stood up. He looked at the crumpled eviction notice on the floor. He looked at his wife, who was vibrating with manic energy. It was crazy. It was fraudulent. It was desperate. And it was his only hope. How do we pay for a party? Lucas asked. We have no cash. We have the emergency card, Brittany said. The one we saved for dire straits. It has a $10,000 limit. That is for emergencies, Lucas said. Like hospitals. This is an emergency, Brittany screamed. This is our life support. We spend it all. Catering, high-end liquor, live music. We make it look like we have money to burn. Money attracts money, Lucas. If we look desperate, we get nothing. If we look rich, we get everything. Lucas felt a strange sensation in his chest. It was the thrill of the gamble, the adrenaline of the con. It was the same feeling he had when he told his father he was dying. It was easier to lie than to work. It was easier to pretend than to build. Okay, he said, a slow grin spreading across his face. Let's do it. Let's go all in. Brittany clapped her hands. Yes, get your phone. Start drafting the invites. Exclusive housewarming and venture launch. Black tie. Tonight. We tell them it is last minute because we just closed a massive deal and we want to celebrate. Tonight, Lucas asked. Tonight, she said. We can't risk the sheriff showing up tomorrow. We do it tonight. We get the checks. We deposit them mobily before midnight. Tomorrow morning, we walk into the management office and slap a cashier's check on the desk and tell them to shove their eviction notice. They spent the next 6 hours in a whirlwind of chaotic spending. They ordered the most expensive hors d'oeuvres from a boutique caterer, paying extra for the rush delivery. They hired a mixologist. They rented a sound system. They spent every last cent of their remaining credit on creating an illusion of infinite wealth. By 6 o'clock, the apartment was transformed. The lights were dimmed. Jazz music was playing softly. Cases of Dom Perignon were chilling in the ice buckets. The air smelled of expensive cologne and opportunity. Lucas stood in front of the mirror adjusting his bow tie. He looked successful. He looked like a CEO. He looked like a man who wasn't hours away from being homeless. He walked into the living room, where Brittany was arranging flowers. She looked stunning in a silver gown, her eyes bright with anticipation. The RSVPs are rolling in, she said, checking her phone. Chad is coming. The venture guys from the Loop are coming. My parents are bringing their friends. This is going to work, Lucas. We are going to be rich. Real rich. Not allowance rich. Lucas nodded, feeling the power of the moment. He looked at the guest list on her phone. He scrolled down. Should we invite Dad? He asked, a sudden pang of guilt or perhaps just habit striking him. I mean, if we pull this off, we can pay him back too. Maybe if he sees us succeeding, he will understand. Brittany froze. She looked up from the phone, her face hardening into a mask of pure disdain. Are you joking? She asked. After he left us to rot, after he ignored your heart surgery, after he made us sell my bag? No. Absolutely not. But he is my father, Lucas mumbled. He is a liability, Brittany said, her voice sharp as glass. Look around, Lucas. This is a high-end event. This is for investors. This is for the elite. Do you want him stumbling in here in his work boots talking about fishing and concrete? Do you want him asking embarrassing questions? Do you want him to remind everyone that he paid for the rent? Lucas looked down at his polished shoes. He remembered the shame he felt at the wedding. He remembered the feeling of being small next to his father's rough hands. You are right, he said softly. He wouldn't understand. Exactly, Brittany said, turning back to the mirror to check her lipstick. He is bad energy, Lucas. He is the past. We are the future. Do not invite old man Tom. He just brings bad luck. Besides, she added with a cruel smirk, he probably wouldn't come anyway. He is probably too busy counting his pennies in that sad little diner. They laughed. They clinked their glasses of champagne. They prepared to welcome the world into a home that wasn't theirs, to spend money they didn't have to impress people who didn't care. Outside, the sun began to set over Chicago, casting long shadows across the lake. The party was about to begin. And they had no idea that the guest of honor wasn't going to be an investor. It was going to be the truth. And the truth doesn't need an invitation. The bass from the sound system was thumping so hard it rattled the crystal flutes in the kitchen cabinets, a rhythmic heartbeat of excess that pulsed through the 41st floor. The penthouse had been transformed into a nightclub, a showroom for a life that did not exist. Waiters in white coats circulated with trays of truffle arancini and wagyu sliders, while a mixologist in a leather apron spun bottles of Grey Goose into the air behind a backlit bar. It was a spectacle of wealth, a mirage constructed on the edge of a cliff. Lucas stood in the center of the room holding court. He looked every inch the tech visionary he pretended to be. His tuxedo was midnight blue, his smile was bright and practiced, and his glass of scotch was aged 18 years. He was talking to a man named Marcus Sterling, a venture capitalist known for high-risk, high-reward plays. So the concept is simple, Marcus. Lucas said, his voice smooth, projecting confidence he didn't feel. We are disrupting the lifestyle branding space. We are leveraging AI to curate hyper-personalized luxury experiences. We already have the infrastructure. We have the user base. We just need the seed capital to scale. We are talking about a 10x return in 18 months. Conservative estimate. Sterling swirled his drink, looking around the apartment. He saw the view. He saw the expensive art on the walls. He saw the crowd of beautiful people laughing and drinking. He saw success. He didn't see the eviction notice crumpled in the trash can. He didn't see the maxed-out credit card receipt burning a hole in Lucas's pocket. It is an impressive setup you have here, Lucas, Sterling said, nodding appreciatively. You certainly live the brand. If you are putting your own skin in the game like this, it shows commitment. I like that. How much are you looking for to close? The round. Lucas felt a surge of adrenaline. The fish was biting. He exchanged a quick electric glance with Brittany across the room. She was charming, a circle of women laughing at their jokes, complimenting their diamonds, playing the perfect hostess. She gave him a tiny, imperceptible nod. Close him. We are opening the round at 200,000, Lucas said, trying to keep his voice steady. But for a strategic partner like you, someone who brings expertise, not just capital, we could structure a convertible note. We want you on the board, Marcus. Sterling smiled. He took a sip of his drink. 200. It is a bold ask for a pre-revenue concept, but I trust my gut, and my gut says you are a man who knows how to win. Let's talk terms. Lucas felt like he was floating. He had done it. He had spun straw into gold. He was going to get the check. He was going to pay the rent. He was going to save his life. While the party raged 41 floors above, the atmosphere in the lobby of the North Lake Shore Tower was entirely different. It was cool, quiet, and imposing. The automatic glass doors slid open, admitting a gust of the night wind, followed by a procession that made the night doorman straighten his tie and swallow hard. A black town car idled at the curb. 4 men in dark suits wearing earpieces stepped out first, scanning the lobby with professional detachment. They weren't police. They were private security, the kind that costs $1,000 an hour. They held the doors open, creating a phalanx of protection. Then Sarah Jenkins stepped out carrying a leather portfolio, her face set in a mask of grim determination. And finally, I stepped out onto the sidewalk. I wasn't wearing my flannel shirt tonight. I wasn't wearing my work boots. I was wearing a charcoal gray suit, tailored in Milan, cut from wool so fine it felt like silk. My shirt was crisp white Egyptian cotton. My shoes were handcrafted leather polished to a mirror shine. On my wrist sat a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than my son's imaginary startup. This was the Thomas Redford the business world knew. This was the chairman. I walked into the lobby, my cane clicking rhythmically on the marble floor, not as a support, but as a scepter. The doorman, a young man named Kevin, who had replaced Henry for the night shift, looked at the entourage. He looked at the suit. He looked at the face he had only seen in passing as the nice old man from Unit 41's family. His eyes went wide. He stumbled out from behind the desk. Sir Kevin stammered, Can I help you?" I didn't stop walking. I didn't smile. Sarah stepped forward. "Mr. Redford is here to inspect his property, Kevin." Kevin looked confused. "Mr. Redford? You mean Lucas?" "He is having a party, sir. I am not supposed to let anyone up without—" The building manager, Frank, came running out of the back office, breathless. He had been waiting for my call. He saw me and immediately bowed his head, almost bending double in his haste to show respect. Chairman Redford, Frank said, his voice trembling slightly. "Welcome back, sir. I apologize for the delay." "The elevator is ready, Chairman." The word hung in the air, heavy with authority. Kevin looked from Frank to me, realization dawning on his face. The old man in the flannel shirt wasn't a guest. He was the owner. He was the boss of the boss. Kevin bowed quickly, his face flushing red. "I am so sorry, Mr. Chairman. I didn't recognize you. Please go right ahead." I stopped in front of the elevators. I looked at the digital display showing the floor numbers. It was stuck on 41, the party floor. "Is the service elevator secure?" I asked Frank. "Yes, sir," Frank said. "We have locked it down. No one leaves with furniture until you say so." "Good," I said. And the main elevators, Frank held up a master key card. "I have overridden the penthouse lockouts. You have direct access." I nodded. I turned to Sarah. She looked at me, a question in her eyes. "Are you ready for this?" I adjusted my cuffs. I felt the weight of the moment. I wasn't going up there to argue. I wasn't going up there to beg. I was going up there to foreclose on a bad debt. "Let's go," I said. The 4 bodyguards stepped into the elevator first, securing the corners. Sarah followed. I walked in last. Frank swiped the master key card and pressed the button for the penthouse. The doors slid shut, sealing us in a capsule of silence. As the elevator began its smooth, rapid ascent, I watched the floor numbers tick upward. 10, 20, 30. With every passing floor, the father in me died a little more, and the businessman took over. I imagined Lucas upstairs, probably clinking glasses, probably thinking he had outsmarted the world. He was about to learn that the world has a very steep learning curve. The elevator slowed as it approached the 41st floor. I could hear the thumping of the bass through the heavy doors. It was the sound of my money being burned. I buttoned my jacket. I straightened my tie. I prepared to make an entrance that they would talk about for the rest of their lives. The elevator chimed. The doors began to open, and I stepped out into the chaos of my own making. The moment the elevator doors slid open, a wall of sound hit me like a physical blow. The bass was vibrating through the floorboards, shaking the soles of my Italian leather shoes. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume, spilled alcohol, and the sweat of desperate people pretending to be relaxed. I stepped out into the penthouse foyer, flanked by my security detail, and for a moment, nobody noticed us. The party was in full swing. A sea of tuxedos and designer gowns swirled under the crystal chandelier I had paid for. Laughter rang out loud and brittle. They were celebrating a future that had already been canceled. I walked forward, my cane tapping a steady, ominous rhythm on the marble floor. My bodyguards moved with me, a wedge of dark suits cutting through the colorful crowd. The first people to see us were the ones on the periphery, the hangers-on standing near the kitchen. They stopped mid-sentence, their drinks halfway to their mouths. They looked at my face, then at the grim-faced men surrounding me, and they instinctively backed away. A hush started to ripple through the room, spreading outward from the entryway like a wave of cold water. Then Brittany saw me. She was standing on a raised platform near the window, holding a microphone, about to make a toast. She looked radiant in her silver gown, a queen presiding over her court. But when her eyes landed on me, her smile didn't just fade, it shattered. Her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She didn't see the suit. She didn't see the watch. She only saw the old man she despised, the man she thought she had successfully banished to the shadows. She lowered the microphone, but she didn't turn it off. Her voice boomed through the speakers, shrill and distorted by feedback. "Security!" she screamed, pointing a manicured finger at me. "Where is the security? Who let this man in here? Get him out! Get him out right now! He is ruining everything!" The room went silent. The DJ, sensing the tension, cut the music. The sudden absence of the bass left a ringing in everyone's ears. All eyes turned to me. I stood there calm, immovable, while my daughter-in-law shrieked like a banshee. Lucas, who had been laughing with Marcus Sterling near the bar, spun around. When he saw me, the color drained from his face, leaving him looking like a wax figure melting under the heat. He didn't look worried about me. He looked terrified of what my presence meant for his image. He ran toward me, his hands waving frantically, trying to shoo me away like a stray dog. "Dad!" He hissed, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and humiliation. "What are you doing here? Look at you. You are crashing my launch party. This is a private event. You are embarrassing me in front of investors. Please just go home. We will talk later. Just leave before you ruin the deal." He reached out to grab my arm, to physically push me back toward the elevator. But before his hand could touch my sleeve, one of my bodyguards stepped in. He didn't strike Lucas. He simply placed a large, immovable hand on my son's chest and stopped him cold. Lucas stumbled back, shock written all over his face. "Do not touch him," the bodyguard said, his voice low and dangerous. Lucas looked at the bodyguard, then at me, confused. "Dad, tell your friend to back off. This is my apartment." I didn't say a word. I didn't look at Lucas. I looked past him, scanning the room, making eye contact with the confused guests who were holding their champagne flutes uncertainly. I saw the judgment in their eyes. They thought I was a crazy relative. They thought this was a family squabble. They had no idea they were standing in a courtroom, and the verdict was about to be read. I raised my right hand and snapped my fingers. The sound was sharp, decisive, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. Frank, the building manager, stepped out from behind me. He was wearing his official uniform, holding a wireless microphone he had taken from the DJ booth. He looked nervous, sweat beading on his forehead, but he knew who signed his paychecks. He knew who the chairman was. Frank tapped the microphone twice. The sound echoed through the penthouse. "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen," Frank announced, his voice shaking slightly before finding its strength. "I am the building manager for this property. I am afraid I have some unfortunate news. This event is officially over. A gasp went through the room. Brittany stormed down from the platform, her heels clacking furiously. She marched up to Frank, her face inches from his. "Who do you think you are?" she screamed, spitting in his face. "You work for us. We pay the rent. You can't cancel my party. I will have you fired. I will sue you. Get out of my house." Frank didn't back down. He looked at her with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. "I do not work for you, Mrs. Redford," Frank said into the microphone, ensuring everyone heard. "And this is not your house. This apartment is currently being reclaimed by ownership due to severe violations of the lease agreement, including unauthorized commercial use of a residential unit, excessive noise complaints, and failure to pay rent." The guests began to whisper. The word eviction floated through the air, toxic and contagious. People started to put their drinks down. The investors' men like Marcus Sterling, who smelled failure like sharks smell blood, began to back away toward the exit. Brittany looked around, seeing her audience slipping away. Panic flared in her eyes. She grabbed Lucas's arm, digging her nails into his tuxedo jacket. "Tell him, Lucas," she shrieked. "Tell everyone this is a mistake. Tell them we own this place. Tell them about the company." Lucas looked at me, his eyes pleading. "Dad, stop this. Please, you are destroying me. Just tell them it is a misunderstanding. Pay the man. I will pay you back. I swear. Just fix it." I looked at my son. I saw a 32-year-old man begging his father to clean up a mess he had made, begging me to lie to save his ego. I felt a profound sadness, but it was a distant sadness, like looking at an old photograph of a person who had died long ago. I remained silent. I nodded to Frank. Frank pulled a folded document from his jacket pocket. It was the eviction order, stamped and signed. "Mr. and Mrs. Redford," Frank continued, his voice echoing in the silent room. "You have been served with a notice to vacate. The grace period has expired. The owner of this building has exercised his right to immediate possession. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal effects and vacate the premises. Security will escort all guests out immediately." Brittany let out a laugh that sounded like glass breaking. She turned to the crowd, spreading her arms wide, trying to regain control of the narrative. "This is ridiculous," she announced, her voice trembling with hysteria. "This is just a mix-up with the bank, a clerical error. Our landlord is a faceless corporation. Redford Holdings. They make mistakes all the time. We will have this sorted in the morning. Please, everyone, stay. Drink the champagne." She turned to Frank, her eyes blazing. "You are lying. You can't speak for the owner. You don't even know the owner. Redford Holdings is a massive company. Do you really think the board of directors cares about one party?" I took a step forward. The sound of my cane hitting the floor was the only sound in the room. The crowd parted for me, sensing the shift in gravity. I walked until I was standing right in front of Brittany and Lucas. I looked at the diamond ring on her finger. I looked at the tuxedo on my son's back. I looked at the fear behind their eyes. "Brittany," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the dead silence of the room it carried to every corner. It wasn't the voice of the mobile wallet. It wasn't the voice of the lonely old man. It was the voice of the chairman. She looked at me, confused by the tone, confused by the suit, confused by the authority radiating from me. "What do you want, Tom?" she hissed. "Go away." "You said you rent from Redford Holdings," I said. "Yes," she snapped. "So what, you seem to be under the impression that Redford Holdings is a faceless corporation," I continued. "You think it is a machine that doesn't see you. You think it is a name on a letterhead." I took another step closer. Lucas tried to back away, but he bumped into the table behind him. "You forgot something very important," I said. "You forgot to ask where the money came from. You forgot to ask who built the floor you are standing on. You forgot to ask who signed the checks that paid for your lifestyle." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. It was thick black with gold embossed lettering. I held it up. "Redford Holdings is not a machine," I said. "It is a man. I flipped the card over and dropped it onto the glass table between us. It landed with a soft tap. "I am Thomas Redford," I declared, my voice rising, filling the room with the force of a judgment handed down from on high. "I am the chairman of Redford Holdings. I own this building. I own this apartment. And I am the landlord you have been insulting for the last 3 years." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just detonated, sucking the oxygen out of the room before the shockwave hit. Brittany stared at the card. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at me, then at the building manager, who was bowing his head in deference, then back at me. The realization hit her eyes like a physical blow. The old man in the flannel shirt. The contractor. The mobile wallet. He wasn't just rich. He was the owner. He was the power. Lucas looked like he was going to be sick. He slumped against the table, his legs giving out. "Dad," he whispered. You own the building." "I own 5 of them, Lucas," I said coldly. "And I bought them with the money I made working the jobs you were too ashamed to talk about." A murmur went through the crowd. I saw Marcus Sterling, the venture capitalist, looking at me with recognition. He stepped forward from the back of the room. "Tom Redford Sterling," asked, his voice full of awe. "The Redford who developed the South Loop project in the 90s, I looked at Sterling. "Yes, Marcus," I said. "That was me." Sterling turned to Lucas. He looked at my son with pure disgust. "You told me your father was a retired handyman. You told me you built your capital from crypto." Lucas stammered, unable to form words. Sterling laughed, a harsh barking sound. "You idiot. You had a legend for a father, and you tried to hide him. I'm out." Sterling walked out the door. And that was the signal. The dam broke. The guests, realizing they were witnessing a social execution, began to flee. They put down their drinks. They grabbed their purses. They rushed for the elevators, desperate to distance themselves from the stench of failure. In less than 2 minutes, the room was empty. The music was gone. The investors were gone. The friends were gone. All that was left was the wreckage of a party that never should have happened, and the 3 of us standing in the ruins. Brittany looked around the empty room. Her stage was empty. Her audience had left. She turned to me, her face crumbling, the arrogance finally stripping away to reveal the terrified grifter underneath. But we are family," she stammered, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "You can't evict family." "Dad, please. This is a joke, right? This is a lesson, okay? We learned it. We learned the lesson." I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had laughed about hiding me. I looked at the woman who had called me a dinosaur. "Family?" I asked. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a stack of photos. They were printed on glossy paper. I threw them onto the table next to my business card. They fanned out, showing the white roses, the 10-tier cake, the smiling faces of Brittany's parents, the empty chair where I should have been. I pointed to the photos. "You got married yesterday," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was colder than the wind off the lake. "You said it was for special people only. You said I wouldn't fit in." I leaned in close, so close I could smell the fear on them. "Well, Brittany," I said, "you were right. I don't fit in with people who lie. I don't fit in with people who use me. And I certainly don't rent my penthouses to people who aren't family." Lucas grabbed my hand. He was crying now, ugly, sobbing tears. "Dad, I am sorry. I was weak. She made me do it. I love you, Dad. Please, don't do this. Transfer the money. Just transfer the money and we will fix everything." He was still asking for money. Even now, even at the end, he didn't want me. He wanted the transfer. I pulled my hand away from his grip as if his touch burned. "You want to know if I transferred the money?" I asked. Lucas nodded, hope flaring in his eyes, pathetic and desperate. I smiled. It was the smile of a man who has finally put down a heavy burden. "Didn't I tell you?" I said. The question hung in the air, a callback to the hundreds of times I had saved him, the hundreds of times I had said yes. "I only pay rent for my family," I said. "And on Saturday at the Ritz-Carlton, you made it very clear that I am not your family. I am just a guest you didn't invite." I turned to Frank. "30 minutes, Frank," I said. "If they are not out, call the sheriff." I turned my back on them. I walked toward the elevator. Behind me, I heard Brittany screaming, blaming Lucas. I heard Lucas sobbing. I heard the sound of their world collapsing. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, cutting off the noise, I adjusted my cuffs. I checked my watch. It was time to go home. I had a fishing trip to plan with Uncle Mike, and for the first time in years, I really was going to enjoy the view. The silence in the penthouse was heavier than the noise had been. Just moments ago, the room had been vibrating with the bass of expensive speakers and the chatter of people pretending to be important. But now the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the ragged, terrified breathing of the two people standing before me. The catering staff had vanished, sensing the toxicity in the air, leaving behind trays of half-eaten Wagyu sliders and sweating bottles of champagne that were slowly losing their bubbles. I stood there, my hands resting on the head of my cane, looking at the wreckage of their vanity. Lucas and Brittany stood by the kitchen island, huddled together, not out of love but out of the sheer instinct of survival, like two rats caught in a trap they had set for themselves. They looked small. Without their audience, without their lies, without my money backing them up, they were just two children playing dress-up in a house they didn't own. I reached into the inner pocket of my tailored suit jacket. The movement made Lucas flinch, as if he expected me to pull out a weapon. In a way, I was. I pulled out the envelope I had been carrying since the day I sat in that diner with Jenny, the waitress. I walked over to the glass dining table, the one they had bought with my credit card 3 years ago, and I tossed the contents across the surface. The glossy photographs fanned out like a poker hand. There they were. The drone shots of the Ritz-Carlton, the white roses, the 10-tier cake, the smiling faces of Brittany's parents holding microphones, and most damning of all, the empty space where a father should have been. I pointed a finger at the photos, my hand steady as a rock. "You said it was a small ceremony," I said, my voice echoing off the high ceilings. "You said it was phone-free. You said it was intimate." I picked up a photo of Brittany raising a glass of champagne, laughing with her head thrown back. "It looks like quite a party," I continued. "You told me it was just for special people, that I wouldn't fit in. Well, look around you now. Where are all those special people? Where is Chad? Where is Marcus Sterling? Where are the investors you were trying to impress with my apartment?" Lucas looked at the photos, then at me. His face was a mask of misery, red and blotchy. He dropped to his knees. It wasn't a graceful movement. He crumbled, hitting the floor with a thud that vibrated through the room. He reached out and grabbed the hem of my trousers, burying his face in the fabric like a toddler. "Dad, stop, please," he sobbed, his voice muffled against my leg. "I know. I lied. I am sorry. I messed up. But you made your point. You scared everyone away. You ruined the launch. Are you happy now? Just stop this, please." I looked down at the top of his head. I felt nothing. No pity. No anger. Just a vast, empty distance. "I am not doing this to be happy, Lucas," I said. "I am doing this to be accurate." He looked up, his eyes swimming with tears, desperation making him look ugly. "Okay. You are right," he blubbered. "We were wrong. We were arrogant. But Dad, you have to fix this. You have the power. Just call the bank, transfer the money, pay the back rent. If you do that, we can tell everyone it was just a misunderstanding. We can say it was a prank. Please, Dad, just send the transfer, and I promise, I swear on my life, I will be a good son. I will do whatever you want." He still didn't get it. Even on his knees, surrounded by the ruins of his life, his brain was stuck in the same loop. Dad equals money. Money fixes everything. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a transaction. He was negotiating the price of his obedience. Brittany stepped forward then. She had wiped her face trying to reassemble her mask of composure, but her eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. She saw Lucas begging, and she decided to change tactics. She tried to smile, but it came out as a grotesque grimace. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling, trying to force a sweetness that wasn't there. "Tom, look, we were just stressed. The wedding, the pressure, the startup, it made us crazy. When I said those things about you, about hiding you, I was joking. It was just a bad joke. You know my sense of humor. I love you. We are family. You can't throw family out on the street. It isn't who you are." She reached out to touch my arm, her fingers aiming for the sleeve of the suit she had mocked just days before. I stepped back, letting her hand fall into the empty air. "A joke," I repeated. "Calling me a mobile wallet was a joke. Telling your friends I belonged in the shadows was a joke. Changing the locks on the door was a punchline." I looked at her, really looked at her, stripping away the influencer veneer to see the hollow person beneath. "You are right about one thing, Brittany," I said. "I don't throw family out on the street." Hope flared in their eyes, a spark of entitlement reigniting. They thought they had found the crack in the armor. They thought the old Tom, the soft Tom, was coming back. "See," Lucas said, scrambling to his feet, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "I knew it. I knew you wouldn't do this to us. We are your blood." I stepped closer to my son. I looked him dead in the eye. I wanted him to remember this moment for the rest of his life. I wanted him to remember the exact second he realized that the well had run dry. "You asked me a question earlier, didn't you?" I said softly. "When you called me screaming on the 10th, when you called me from the spa pretending to die, you asked if I had transferred the money." Lucas nodded, his mouth hanging open slightly. "Yes. Did you? Is it coming?" I leaned in my face inches from his. I let the silence stretch until it was screaming. "Didn't I tell you?" I whispered, the words cutting through the air like a razor. Lucas blinked, confused. "Tell me what?" I smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was the smile of a landlord closing a file. "I told you that I only pay rent for my family," I said. "I only support the people who respect me. I only build foundations for those who stand with me." I gestured to the photos on the table, to the empty room, to the lie they had lived. "And on Saturday, at the Ritz-Carlton, when you stood on that stage and let your father-in-law call you a self-made man, when you hid me away like a dirty secret, when you decided I wasn't special enough to witness your joy, you made a choice. You chose your family. And it wasn't me." Lucas recoiled as if I had slapped him. Brittany let out a gasp, her hands flying to her mouth. "You proved to me that we are strangers," I said, my voice returning to a normal volume, authoritative and final. "I am just a guest you didn't invite, and strangers don't get to live in my penthouses for free. Strangers pay rent, and you are evicted." I turned away from them. I looked at Frank, who was standing by the door with the security team. He looked pale, having witnessed the destruction of a family, but he stood at attention. "Frank," I said. "Yes, Mr. Chairman." "How long does a standard eviction clear-out take?" I asked. "Usually 24 hours, Sir Frank said." "They don't have 24 hours, I said, checking my Patek Philippe watch. "It is 9 o'clock. I want this unit secured by 9:30. I turned back to Lucas and Brittany one last time. "You have 30 minutes, I said. "You can take whatever you can carry in your hands. Clothes, toiletries, personal items, anything you cannot carry, anything that remains in this apartment at 9:31 becomes the property of Redford Holdings to be sold to cover your outstanding debt." "But the furniture," Brittany screamed. "The electronics, the art. We bought those." "You bought them with my money," I corrected her. "And now they are collateral." "Start packing," I said. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't wait for more begging. I walked toward the elevator. Behind me, the sound of chaos erupted. I heard Brittany screaming at Lucas to find suitcases. I heard Lucas sobbing, throwing things into bags. I heard the sound of a life being dismantled in real time. I stepped into the elevator, and Sarah stepped in beside me. She didn't say a word. She just pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, cutting off the sounds of their desperation, I let out a long breath. I adjusted my cuffs. I straightened my tie. It was done. I had cut off the limb to save the body. It hurt. God, it hurt. But as the elevator began its descent, I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't a mobile wallet anymore. I was Thomas Redford, and I was finally free. It has been exactly 30 days since the night I cleared out the penthouse, and the silence in my life has settled like a fine, comfortable dust. I am standing on the balcony of Unit 41 for the very last time. The wind off Lake Michigan is brisk today, whipping the collar of my flannel shirt against my neck. I am not wearing the Italian suit anymore. That was a costume for a necessary performance. Today, I am just Tom again. But I am a lighter Tom. A Tom who isn't carrying the dead weight of 2 grown adults on his back. On the glass table inside, which is now the only piece of furniture left in the entire apartment, sits a manila envelope. It is the final report from the private investigator I kept on retainer just for peace of mind. I wanted to make sure they didn't come back. I wanted to make sure the chapter was truly closed. I opened it this morning over a cup of diner coffee, and the contents were as predictable as they were tragic. The photos in the report show a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. The kind of place with neon signs that flicker and buzz all night long and charge by the hour. It is a far cry from the Ritz-Carlton. In the grainy images, I saw the final act of their marriage play out in the parking lot. Lucas and Brittany were screaming at each other. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew the script. She was blaming him for the eviction. He was blaming her for the spending. They were 2 parasites who had run out of a host, and now they were turning on each other. The report says Brittany didn't stay long. A black SUV pulled up, driven by a man I vaguely recognized as one of the venture capitalists from the party, a man with less scruples than Marcus Sterling. Brittany threw her suitcase into the trunk without looking back. She got in the passenger seat and drove away, leaving my son standing on the cracked asphalt of a motel parking lot, holding a plastic bag of clothes, watching his wife and his future disappear in a cloud of exhaust. Lucas is alone now. He has no wife. He has no penthouse. He has no father to call. I stared at the photo of him standing there looking lost and small, and I waited for the guilt to come. I waited for that old familiar pang that used to make me reach for my checkbook. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt a strange sense of peace. He is at rock bottom. And rock bottom is the only solid foundation he has ever stood on. Now he has a choice. He can build something real or he can stay there. But either way, it is his life to live, not mine to subsidize. I turned away from the view and walked back into the empty living room. It looked bigger without the pretentious furniture. It looked cleaner. Sarah Jenkins was standing by the kitchen island, a stack of documents arranged in front of her. She looked at me, her expression soft. "Are you ready to do this, Tom?" she asked. I walked over to the table. I picked up the heavy fountain pen. I looked at the contract of sale. The buyers were a young couple architects. They appreciated the structure. They didn't care about the address for the prestige. They cared about the bones of the building. They were paying $3 million. "I am ready," I said. I signed my name at the bottom of the page. Thomas Redford. The ink flowed smoothly, sealing the deal, severing the last physical tie to the lie my son had lived. Sarah took the papers and slid them into her briefcase. "That is it," she said. "The wire transfer will hit your account by this afternoon. Do you want me to put it in the high-yield savings with the rest of your portfolio?" "No," I said, capping the pen. Sarah paused. No. I looked around the empty room. I thought about the hard hat I wore for 40 years. I thought about the cold winters pouring concrete. I thought about the young men and women I saw on job sites today, trying to build a life with their hands just like I did, but struggling against a world that tells them they are not special because they don't work in tech or finance. I want you to open a new account, I said. We are starting a foundation, the Redford Scholarship for Trades and Construction. Sarah smiled a genuine wide smile that lit up her face. I like the sound of that, she said. I want every cent of this sale, all $3 million, to go into that fund. I continued, my voice gaining strength. I want to pay for trade schools. I want to buy tools for apprentices. I want to help the kids who aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. The kids who know that self-made isn't a slogan you put on Instagram. It is what you do when nobody is watching. Consider it done, Tom, Sarah said. I will have the paperwork drawn up by Monday. I nodded. Thank you, Sarah, for everything. I walked her to the elevator. We shook hands not as attorney and client, but as friends who had weathered a storm together. The doors closed, and she was gone. I was alone in the penthouse. I took one last walk through the rooms. I walked into the master bedroom where Lucas and Brittany had slept, dreaming of a life they hadn't earned. I walked into the bathroom where they had preened in mirrors I paid for. I felt no ghosts here. I felt no nostalgia. It was just drywall and glass. It was just a job site that I had finally cleared. I took my phone out of my pocket. I scrolled past Lucas's number. I hadn't blocked him, but I hadn't answered his calls in a month. He had stopped calling a week ago. Maybe he was finally learning. I found the number I was looking for. Mike, my brother in Ohio. The man Brittany said wasn't special enough to fly in for the wedding. I pressed call. It rang twice before he picked up, his voice booming and cheerful. Tom, Mike shouted. To what do I owe the pleasure? Everything okay in the big city? Everything is fine, Mike, I said, and for the first time in a long time I meant it. Everything is perfect. Listen, are the bass still biting down at the creek? Are they biting? Mike laughed. Tom, they are practically jumping into the boat. Why are you thinking of coming down? I am not thinking about it, Mike, I said. I am coming. Pack the cooler. Get the cabin ready. I will be there tomorrow afternoon. Tomorrow, Mike asked, surprised. But what about the business? What about the kids? Don't you have to, manage things? I looked out at the Chicago skyline one last time. I saw the buildings I owned. I saw the empire I had built. It would run without me. It had good managers. It had Sarah. I am retired, Mike, I said, letting the word roll off my tongue like honey. I am officially fully retired. I tramped down a heavy load today, brother. A very heavy load. And now I am light. I just want to fish. I just want to sit on a porch and drink a beer that I bought with my own money and talk to a man who knows my name. Mike chuckled warmly. Well, get on the road then, Tom. The fish are waiting, and the beer is cold. I hung up the phone. I put it back in my pocket. I walked to the front door of the penthouse. I stepped out into the hallway. I didn't look back. I pulled the heavy door shut. The latch clicked. It wasn't the click of a lock keeping me out. It was the click of a book closing on a long, sad story. I took the elevator down to the lobby. Frank was there, standing at the desk. He straightened up when he saw me. Mr. Chairman, Frank said, Is everything satisfactory? Everything is satisfactory. Frank, I said. The new owners take possession tomorrow. Treat them well. I will, sir. Have a good evening. I walked out through the glass doors onto the sidewalk. The city noise was loud, the sirens, the traffic, the life of Chicago. But I didn't hear the chaos. I heard the music of freedom. I walked to my old pickup truck parked right in front. It was dusty. It had a dent in the bumper. It wasn't a luxury car. It was a working man's truck. I climbed into the driver's seat. The leather was cracked and familiar. It smelled of old coffee and sawdust. It smelled like home. I started the engine. It roared to life, a deep, throaty rumble that vibrated in my chest. I put it in gear. I merged into traffic heading south toward the highway, toward Ohio, toward the water. I wasn't a mobile wallet anymore. I wasn't a shadow. I wasn't the embarrassment at the wedding. I was Thomas Redford. I was a builder. I was a father who had finally done the hardest part of the job. I had let go. And as the city faded in my rearview mirror, shrinking until it was just a memory on the horizon, I took a deep breath. The air tasted sweet. It tasted like the future. And for the first time in years, the road ahead was wide open. The hardest thing I ever built wasn't a skyscraper. It was the resolve to say no to my own flesh and blood. Many parents mistake unconditional funding for unconditional love, but that is a poison that kills character. When you allow yourself to be treated as an ATM, you don't purchase respect. You only rent hypocrisy. True love sometimes looks like an eviction notice. It is letting your children fall so they can finally learn to stand on their own. Never trade your dignity for a seat at a table where you are not respected. That is the one asset you must never liquidate. If this story of tough love and reclaiming dignity hit home for you, please leave a like to help spread this message. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories. Have you ever had to make a heartbreaking decision to teach a loved one a lesson? Share your story in the comments below.